Hi everyone, and welcome back to episode 5 of my live play cash game play and explain series. At the moment, I've got two tables of 510 at the top going, and two tables of 500 at the bottom. And we've flopped a set on this single raised pot and check raised flop. We're going to be continuing with I think just a B75, maybe sizing up a little bit more to make it slightly more geometric. We'll go a bit bigger than B75 and then be looking to jam pretty much any river. Even go pot. We might go a pot sizing just to make it a little bit more geometric. Still going to be a slide over bet on river. 10-5-8 top left. I think we're going to start with betting this hand. Like, it's probably a little bit too marginal to check call, and we've got a little bit too much going on that I don't really want to check fold, so probably just going to preference putting this in a betting line. In terms of sizing structure, we can probably take different lines other than third pot, but we're just going to go third pot here. Normally, I would be using some like overbet sizings as well, which I think is a totally fine strategy on 10-5-8. Just going to fold the queen 7 and going to be jamming the pocket twos. Obviously, are occasionally getting cooled here, but that is what it is. Faded the snap, so that's pretty good. After we turn equity, I think we're going to continue with a B75 size here. We do get the call, which is pretty nice. Good start to the session. I'm all these tables are fresh. As you can see on my HUD. I think first hand played, have just joined the table, so pretty good way to start the session. So we do get called twice. Thought for a moment I'd river to straight, but we have not. I think I will triple this off though. I think it's going to be hard in general for population to find enough defense first triple VVB. Like I don't think we're ever going to get a 10x to fold hand. Well, I don't think in theory we really need 10x to fold here. So it's more whether he continues with enough 8x and 5x. So I'm going to go a B125, and I think this will get enough overfolds from population in general. Going to 3-bet the 8s. Like in such wide range spots, it is like quite hard for big blind to defend appropriately. Particularly given like I've taken this sizing line indiscriminately. Like this is A6 off is going to mix on all three straights, right? It's going to mix on flop, turn, and river, and I haven't randomized here. So he's going to need to hero down like really wide to account for the fact that, I'm probably over bluffing in that line. But it's quite hard for, unless big blind is assuming that I'm over bluffing in that line, and therefore adjusts accordingly, it's going to be quite hard to defend appropriately. Just while we have a pause in the action, I might just want to thank all of you for subscribing, liking the videos, and all the comments and feedback you've given. Yeah, really appreciate it, and glad to see that you guys are enjoying the content. So yeah, if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do so. And again, if you have any questions about any of the hands or how I played it, yeah, leave it in the comments. I'll do my best to get back to you and give my feedback. Obviously, I'm going to make plenty of mistakes as well. So if you sort of identify an opportunity where you think I've sort of misplayed, yeah, more than happy to receive that feedback. And I'll let you know what my thoughts are. And like, it's okay to have, differing opinions or different, because there's different strategies that are certainly going to be viable, particularly in anonymous pools. Um, so yeah, I think it's a good way to learn in terms of just sharing uh, your thought processes and comparing to mine, and we can sort of go from there. It's a good way to learn and explore new strategies that you might not have previously considered. Going to open up the king queen suited, and then the 10-5 deuce again. So I think a lot of the time I'm going to be using larger bets here, and this is going to be a pretty good candidate to do so. So we're going to start with a B125. Flopping the straight here is pretty nice. I think we have two options. Um, we can obviously start with, I mean, probably playing like medium-sized bets here. Like we can't really overbet because there are straights in both players' ranges, and we can also go for check raise. And I think this hand is going to benefit for just like piling as much money in as possible early on. So I'm going to start with check raise. I think that's probably the largest way to build pot growth, and I think a lot of population will sort of overstab here. On flop. So I'm expecting stabs at a relatively high frequency. After it goes check check, I don't expect villains to open the action enough here on this flush completing turn. And I also don't expect them to protect their range with enough flush draws. So I think I'm never really worried about the flush coming in here. And I'm also not expecting him to build the pot himself. So I am going to start with a bet and then bet river as well. It's going to be hard to get flash. We no longer have a hand that wants to play for stacks, right? Because there are going to be some flushes in his range. I'm just going to B75 and then I'll probably overbet river. We don't really get to play overbets on this flush completing turn, I don't think. Just because he can have flushes in range, so it's there's not as much of our range that can be built around overbetting. But certainly on the river now, like you can be playing overbets, you can be playing jams as a sizing, even though that's like 7x pot or whatever it is. Obviously this hand isn't going to go into a jam line, but I think, as I said, I don't think villains are going to protect well enough. So I am still going to put it in a 2x pot structure. Because I just don't expect villains to get here with flushes anywhere near enough, because I think they'll either bet flop or often they'll raise turn as well. And so, I think we have, 95+% equity there, and so can kind of bet whatever size we want. As I said, it's too thin to jam in that at that stage the only thing that's calling us is flushes that have gotten there, but I think we can still get called by enough. Just, any hand that doesn't believe us for the 2x pot sizing. The ace on the river is probably a pretty bad card to get paid on, because I guess a lot of our bluffs very naturally from carrying from the turn to the river are going to be like ace of spades X holdings, where we obviously block the nut flush. But when we river the ace, right, we then no longer need to be bluffing those hands. So I guess that river cuts off a lot of our bluffs and makes it less likely we're going to get heroed. Rebetting the ace-5 suited. King 9-4, I think we can range bet for third pot. It's going to be totally fine. Tens is obviously a value bet. It's a little bit merged in terms of, we can, well, sorry, it's not merged, it's serves multiple purposes, and we can get called by his, 9x, 4x, pocket 7 type holdings. And then we also can clean out some equity from his overcard holdings as well. We're going to start with third pot with range, top left. we face a min raise, essentially a click raise. Obviously, versus this size, we can't fold. I would expect intuitively that his raise sizing should be based around a larger size because most of his raising range is going to be built around his like pocket fours, pocket nines region, which obviously wants to pile in money. I guess for this smaller size, he's saying that he's raising weak king X plus for value. We will certainly be continuing with a call. It's kind of hard for there to be too many bluff combos. Like I suppose the natural bluff combos are coming from the Queen Jack, Queen 10, Jack 10 region, which we obviously block. So it's not going to be a hand that if we like faced significant aggression on turn on river that we're probably looking to hold on with. After we face check, it's a question of whether we can put in a small value bet or whether we just want to check back. I'm pretty tempted to just put in a small value bet. Like that size raise on the flop could even be some like weak 9x. And there's going to be some 4x raises that are quite theoretical as well. I'm going to put in a small bet size here. I'm not entirely sure if this is theoretical because we are reopening the action to get double check raised. And so maybe that's not what we want to do. Jack 5-8 down the bottom. Yeah, can go multiple ways again. We can go small sizings, we can build around overbet. We yeah, can do whatever we want here. I'm gonna start with check. Yeah, and then after we've bet turn, I think it's probably a bit too thin for us to try and get another straight out of a 9. Like we can get another straight out of a 9, but like he's probably got enough king X now that like we're not really a favorite when we bet and get called, and I don't really want to reopen the action to getting bluff raised by anything. Yeah, so like that's a hand that, so it was a really thin value raise from him on the flop. Bottom right, after it's on check check, we're going to now polarize around the ace. I'm going to start with B175. And probably go bigger, and maybe we want to go bigger with this type of hand. Like if we want to go B200, B250 even, I think those are both going to be fine. What was I? I was talking about something on this hand. I've forgotten the action. Yeah, the King X. Yeah, so it's a super thin value raise with Ace 9, and that's the type of holding that like we could have, bet small, and gotten called twice. I just it's unclear to me exactly what his range looks like there, and so the extent that there's like lots of marginal King X in that range, then we're value owning ourselves a little bit against that. 3-5-4, pretty much going to be checking range here. Sevens is obviously a hand that benefits significantly from betting, but I'm just going to play a... I mean, we are against a fish here who's short, so we can deviate from that. And we probably should deviate if we have a good reason to. And maybe we do, in that he'll overplay his single pair holdings here. I've changed my mind here. Against a recreational, I'm just going to play my hand and bet this for a big sizing. Yeah, we get a snap call. So I think that the snap call is going to be lots of ace-x and lots of single pairs here. And doesn't really interact with the king X, right? Like there's not really many. There's going to be some like, king 5 of spades type combos that hit 2 pair. But I think this hand is certainly worth a second straight, and it could also even be worth 3 straights. So we're going to bet B75 a second time, get another snap. The ace is a really bad card. Gonna have to check back here. A lot of his range is going to be built around ace-x. So, hopefully we're running into, the 5x region now, but certainly too thin to value that. And so he's just got the ace-x. Yeah, so that's just an unfortunate river, but, we obviously were putting in the money when we had a good hand. or when we had the best hand, and no more money went in as soon as we were behind. So pretty happy with how we played that hand. As I said, just like deviating from a range check strategy because we recognize that we're up against a fish. And when you're up against a fish, you really, I mean, you can maximally exploit and you don't really need to care about what your range is doing. And so you can kind of just play your hand. Gonna throw back the A7. And we see a limp. Gonna do like a fair amount of ISO raising against limpers, but Queen 5 off is gonna be way too weak. I think we will start with donks though. Again, we've seen these just like, I mean, granted his hand was totally fine to be calling, particularly with the 6x that he had. Ace 5 deuce top right going to start with checks. We don't want to be betting range on that flop. Just going to fold the 10-3, and I am going to donk 75% pot bottom right. Against a limping range that's just snapping, we can get overcards to be calling. We're going to B75, B75, probably check river, and decide whether we want a hero. Pretty bad river. We are going to check, and I'm not ruling out heroing. Okay, up against nines, sure. Yeah, I mean that's obviously totally fine. We don't really expect his range to be that strong like after he's limped it, but I mean it looks like he's probably just like limping his whole range. Top right, I think we can check twice. We can probably also start stabbing, but we're going to check twice this time. And if it goes check check again, we'll probably can we overbet river? Probably not. It's like maybe we are allowed to in theory, maybe the hand is strong enough to, but like I don't expect to get heroed by pocket nines if we overbet, whereas I do expect to get called if we bet, slightly under pot. So I think we'll go for this slight under pot size. I mean, really, he's isolating his range to a lot of the time being this like sevens, eights, nines region. Sometimes it's sixes, and we're going to get raised here. But I think very happy to just fold if we do get raised. Ace 4-3, we can check, we can big bet. Are probably going to be the two main strategies I take here. Going to start with check this time. And we turn the straight, which is pretty nice. Got a limper up here, going to ISO the limper. I generally ISO pretty big on ignition pulls. Fish just don't like folding after they've limped. So kind of like you can ISO as big as you want, as long as they're still, calling with pretty trashy hands. Going to start with third pot against the fish here, and going to build around overbet here. And we'll probably go the B250, maybe even B300 here. I mean, we don't need to get called there very often. When we size up super big and then effectively get to jam rivers, we're gonna make so much when we get paid that it's gonna be worthwhile, even though we're gonna get like lots of folds. We're gonna ISO the ace four. It's pretty thin, but obviously up against a recreational here, and I think we can value bet the king x twice here. Sorry, the 6x twice here. Like we're just getting snap called. And I think we can value bet a third time here. Like it's pretty thin, but I think this is the type of guy who might just call us down with ace high 3 times here. I'm just going to put in a small bet. Like I don't think he's got many flush draws just based off the timing of his of his calls. I think it's just like there's going to be some deuce X, there's going to be some 3x here. Reasonably thin. Well, obviously it's very thin, but I think it's okay. And I don't think I'll ever get bluff raised. So we ISO'd here and get donked into for pot. Obviously, there's going to be a large portion of our range that we can just, close our eyes and call down with. But we don't need to with the ace-4. He can be merging and donking pot with better hands than ace-4, right? Like, he can just have, like, I don't know, ace-9 or something. And then we look like an idiot if we choose to call down. So we just, like, are going to wait our turn and take his money when he gives us the opportunity to. Gonna deviate from my standard sort of 2.2 open sizing to opening 3, just because we've got 2 recreationals in the big blinds who I think are going to call way too wide. King 10 off is actually pretty close here, particularly with 2 opens, and from a tighter player on the hijack, just going to let this one go. Yeah, so these are like some small adjustments that you can make when you've got recreationals in the pool, right? Like, we can open to 3 big blinds. We can open to 4 big blinds if they're like, always calling, right? Like we're just getting this guy making snap decisions. And I should see what he called us with actually on the previous hand. I'm just going to look at that now, just so we sort of know. Yeah, okay, so he had eight deuce offsuit for 4th pair, right? So clearly just going to be a massive calling station with like any pair. So typically going to play a lot of checks just like 4-way, but I think given we have just a massive calling station in the small blind, going to start building the pot immediately and basically look to stack all of his ace X. This also like puts the button in a pretty tough spot, and so we're going to get him to play pretty honestly against us. So kind of we get to, just we get to isolate against just the fish, and now obviously I think we have a just clear. Sorry, I didn't actually mean to. Well, I think that bet size is fine. I didn't mean to bet. I misclicked the bet. I was going to talk about the sizing a bit more, but I think that was just a clear spot to sort of B75 jam almost any river, given how wide he's been. Do I want to ISO this? I think there's a good argument too. So we are going to ISO. I mean, there's so much dead money in the pot, and don't expect button or small blind to ever have strong hands, and we've presumably got a recreational player here. Okay, and so we get back jammed. We obviously have a hand that can only fold. But valuable note. So limp small blinds and back jams after I squeeze. Good to know. Again, like given that I also haven't been aggressive at all, right? Like it's not like he can be deliberately trapping me very often there with aces because he knows that I'm gonna like squeeze at a pure frequency or anything. So like if he did have aces, seems like a pretty poor way to play it, given that he has no inclination that I'm aggressive. Gonna start with B33 in the top, and I'm actually gonna limp against the a presumed recreational player. We can get away with playing a much wider range. And there's some cool things that we can do in limp pots. Like I expect them to under aggress, and then we can sort of see that sort of any board and actually just like I think get overfolds on flop. As it is, he ISOs to 4 big blinds. We're just going to let him have it. We see the king on the turn, so we can go a couple of ways here. We can build in some pretty big overbets. Reason being that we block. We don't expect him to ever have ace queen. The king X obviously hits our range really strongly, and we block his strongest holdings in pocket threes. So it makes for a quite nice bluff raise, and obviously we have live outs to a queen, and the 3 is going to be live for us most of the time as well. going to fold the 7-5 here. And then the question is, do we want to barrel? And that's not immediately obvious to me. I think I'm going to end up checking. Also because I just don't have enough time bank, and when I'm rushed, I generally take a more passive action. So like if I had an extra minute to think about it, maybe I'd land on bet. But I'm going to check, and I'll explain why. And not that I think I have a huge amount of showdown there. I just think that once I overbet turn, I think that I'm getting the overfolds at that node. And so once he's called turn, that his range is going to be stronger than it should be. And so when you're then choosing to bluff river into a range that's stronger than it should be, often that's not going to work out very well for you. Now in this instance, and this is perhaps something that I would have considered if I had an extra minute to think about it. He does have hands like Queen Jack, like Queen 10, that are going to be clear calls on the turn, but we might be able to fold on the river, right? So he's going to have, Jack X, 10x of diamond type hands, and sort of these Queen Jack, Queen 10, King Queen. I mean, I'm not sure if I can get King Queen to fold, those type of hands. So, the more often he has those type of holdings, then the more often I want to triple it off. And I think my hand was a viable candidate to triple off. So there's a couple of considerations there as to whether I should triple that at a pure frequency, or I should give up, or whether I should mix. Few considerations. I don't lean strongly in either camp, though. Definitely going to be opening up the 8-7 off into the recreational player. 8-7 off is, pretty marginal open at the best of times, but then against a very recreational big blind, like this is going to be massively plus EV, so it would be a big mistake to fold this hand. Obviously just folding versus 3-bet. Probably sitting out top left. Like this is the only table where we don't really have a marked player. Like this guy is short, or was short. Yeah, is short, but is sort of playing, reasonably fine stats, whatever stats. Doesn't appear to be, super recreational. So I think we'll just choose to sit out and try and find a better spot. The ace-4-3 is not an amazing board for us to see bet at a high frequency. And as it is, we face donk, which I don't really think is supposed to be happening at high frequency on this board. I mean, yeah, I don't think it is. I think versus this tiny size, we can call. We have showdown against some of his random hands that are just stabbing this, like a person who's choosing the donk here. I'm assuming it's not like a viable strategy. They can just be, flatting Jack 8 suited and choosing to donk it here for whatever reason. And we have plenty of showdown, plenty of equity against that. After we face a turn barrel here, even though it's for half pot, which I don't think is a particularly strong size, which is making me wonder whether I should raise. I am just going to let it go though. Like our king blocker isn't amazing, like he shouldn't really have ace king in range, so maybe we should choose to raise with sort of queen jack, queen 10 type hands. And I also, assuming he's a recreational player, don't really want him to try and make him fold top pair. Like I don't think that's going to work out particularly well for us. Recreationals don't like folding an ace there. So yeah, like that's going to be the reasoning there. I think that's just a um, a case where our range is going to be doing perfectly fine, and that hand in particular is kind of suffering against this donking strategy. And we're just going to make a note of that. Donks h4-3 after flooding small blind. Not to mention, like, also some of that donking range is going to be 2x, which made a straight. I don't think we want to start bluffing the a6. We have, some level of showdown value, and ultimately from the big blind, our range has so much air that we don't really want to start bluffing from the ace-x region. And facing this bet, we're now just going to fold. Pocket sevens, I think just going to pure flat versus, particularly given he's off like 38 big blinds. If we thought this guy was like super wide, maybe this is just strong enough to stack off with, but there's also not really that indication that he's super wide. Folding the 6-8, folding the 9 deuce, and then I think just going to immediately fold the sevens. We don't really have much playability on turns and rivers, unless we think again that he's super wide and that we just intend to sort of call down. But I expect a recreational player's range here to be like reasonably ace-x heavy anyway, so I don't think we're doing very well here. Open up the queen 10. It's 3-bet. Queen 10 off is just going to have to be a pure fold. So I think just we might wrap up this video. Generally try and keep them to about half an hour. So I want to thank you all again for your engagement with the channel. It's it's been really great. So keep that up. Let me know if you have any suggestions. But otherwise, I'll catch you on the next episode. All right. Cheers. Thank you.